In this video, I want to look at one of the ways that you can take a finished track and bring it into a live context. So imagine that you've finished arranging your track with an Ableton, with an arrangement view, and now you're thinking about potentially using that track for a live performance. There's a number of different ways of doing that, and it all depends on the way that you like to work as to which way you should go. I'm going to show you a method that is a really good starting point for a lot of different styles. So hopefully this will cover a fair bit of ground, and it'll help you kind of get going and get over that hurdle of what to do next once you have a piece of music that you really like and you want to play live. So first and foremost, what I'm going to show you is a finished piece of music, and then we're going to break that piece of music down. And before we do that, we need to make a copy. And the reason being is because if you've just spent a massive amount of time and effort making a piece of music, you want to keep that as safe as possible. So you basically make a copy of that track, and then on the copy, that's what you work with then to break it down into some type of way where you can trigger different clips and different loops within a live context. So that's really important. If you don't do that, it means that you're editing maybe the only copy of the track, the original track that you have, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. So that's just a wee heads up before we start. So let's hop over to Ableton, and I'm just going to give you a listen to a thing that I've been working on for a while. This is kind of funny. This started off as a track that I put together for a live performance, but the track, it only ever existed in arrangement view, which is what we're looking at the minute. And essentially, just to give you a quick overview, the different bits and pieces within here are a mixture of hardware, so modular synths, hardware synthesizers, there's software synthesizers in here, there's tape echoes, there's all sorts of things that I've processed and reprocessed and repurposed, but everything that you hear in here is basically my own. So I haven't, well, actually, there's a couple of samples in here as well. Yeah, there is a couple of samples in here now that I remember, just some percussion elements, and Crash, I think, is about the height of it. But so there's a mixture of MIDI devices or hardware devices and samples. So anything that I, was using for a live set outside of this Ableton project, sometimes I send MIDI out to hardware synths and play that, and then the audio comes back again. So what I've done is I've bounced everything down to audio in that context. So if I have any external synthesizers that you see around here, I've recorded the audio in, and the audio is now in this project, right? Just to give you a heads up there. So we'll just have a quick listen to this, and then what we'll do, I'll skim through it as well, and then what we'll do is I'll show you how to break this down and put it into a live setup for clip view. So clip view will be here. So as you can see, there's some bits and pieces in here already, but yeah, it's all over the place. So we need to make that a lot cleaner and tidier and have it ready for a live performance, and that's what we're going to do. But first up, let's have a listen. so forth. So just to give you a general feel for the track, I think that's really important because we need to know how to break this track up. So normally at this stage, I'm happy with the track. I'm pretty happy with the mix. There's still a few tweaks, but isn't there always? And essentially what I want to do now is I want to go through the track and see how I can break this down. So essentially what I want to do is I want to get sections that I know will loop together, right? So for example, if I go for a particular part of the track here, these black and white sections at the very top, they're just blank MIDI clips, and they represent eight bar sections, right? So say if I go here, right, and just press spacebar to play this. And what I'm doing is I'm having a listen through the whole track to see if this is going to loop. So I'm going to activate the loop function, and then let's see what the loop sounds like. That loops quite well. So what I can do is I can right click up here and add a locator and name that, right? And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through this whole track and do exactly that. It's essentially what I'm going to do, right? Now, if I, again, so this section here would be the intro, right? So what I can do is I can zoom in here a wee bit so you can see what's going on. Right click, add a locator, right? So intro. Now I'm going to have intro 1 here. I've done this before, so I know roughly which sections work, right? So this intro is 8 bars long, right? So that's going to be the first section, and literally anything that exists within this highlighted area now will be the intro, right? So then the next section would be this, right? So a lot of what you'll find is this normally goes in sections of 4 bars, 8 bars, 16 bars, 32 bars, and so on, right? If you're not sure what a bar is usually it's a measure of time within music, right? So if you're not entirely sure what that is, this isn't the tutorial for that. But essentially, it's a section of time that I know that's going to loop well within a project, right? So this is intro 2. And if I was to loop this now and play it, I know that once I get to the end here, and it cycles back again, it's going to sound okay. Right? That sounds okay. Now, there will be instances where it won't sound okay, so you need to work out, what length of a loop that you want to use to essentially get the most out of your sound in a live context. Now, live can mean multiple different things to multiple different people. This is just one instance of what you can do for a live set. So the next section, this is where the bass comes in. So what I might do, and there's 2 different basses. There's a bass here and a bass here. So what I might do is essentially right click at another locator, and I'm naming these things that I understand. So depending on your track, you name it whatever you'll remember. You want a name that's going to trigger your memory of what happens within this part of the track, right? So this one for me is going to be bass 1 intro, right? So I know that the bass is coming in here. Then on this next section, there's another bass coming in, right? So what I'm going to do is right click, add another locator, and then I'll say bass 2 intro, right? And bass 2, and there's also percussion there, right? These really help for you to remember where you are and what you're doing, right? So if I just hear the percussion starting to sneak in there now. Now if I go to here, there's much more percussion. So what you might do is just name that bass 2 percussion and 2, something like that, right? So essentially I'll go through and do as many loops as I can here just to make sure that everything works within a context of a loop. So anything within this highlighted area now will end up becoming within arrangement view, it'll end up becoming part of one clip that I can trigger here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this as is a second, right? This is the original, so I don't want to make any changes to this. Even though I've done these few changes here, that's fine. I'm not even going to save that, to be honest with you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fast forward a wee bit and show you what happens at the end, right? And then I'll go back and show you how to do all of this. So let's fast forward to this, where I've basically done this to the whole track now, right? And what I've done is I've exported these clips from arrangement view, which we're in at the minute, to clip view. So I'm not going to save that, and I'm now going to open up one that I've already done, right? I'm not doing, I've showed you how to do one aspect of this already. So let's go to arrangement view. So now you can see here, if I just zoom out a wee bit, all the different sections that I made. So most of these are 8 bars long, bar this section here, which is something like 24 bars, right? So I can click and highlight a particular area, and it tells me how long or how many bars are within that area too. If you look down here at the bottom, it'll say 24 bars, right? So it says time selection start 41 to 65, and then length 24. So I know that's 24 bars long, okay? Doesn't really matter too much at this stage. When you're kind of working like this, you will need to practice this. You're not going to just nail this first time around when you're performing this live. So plenty of practice. So essentially what I do is, say if we take the intro as an example, right? Now your loop brace is really important here. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a loop brace, and it's a 8 bar loop here at the minute. And if I basically right click on that, and there's an option here to consolidate time to new scene, right? And this is intro 1. So if I click on that, what it does is it renders a copy of anything in this highlighted area. So say there was loads of stuff coming down here, anything in that highlighted area will then form part of your first scene, right? So if I move in now to clip view, the first scene would be here. Now what you can do is in your clip section here, your clip launcher, what you can do is you can right click and rename that and rename it anything you want. So I've renamed that intro 1. The name doesn't move over here, so you will have to rename these. Now I'm using Ableton 11, but everything that I'm telling you applies in the previous versions of Ableton as well, as far as I'm aware. Well, maybe not them all, but at least 10. So if I now, well, basically what I've done is I've, moved this up, the intro 2, right clicked and consolidate to new scene, right? And I've went through every single one and done the same thing individually, right? So once you do that, you build up all of your different clips. Now, what I've done is I've, if you look at the project anyway, everything is kind of grouped within sections. So you've got melody, bass, drums, and crash. And then this hardware MIDI thing is just MIDI that I send out to hardware to make it play something, and then I record the audio back in again. Or I can just turn on the synths and just use, the MIDI and mute the other audio that's in there. Depends on what way you want to go in your live set, but I've got both options here, which is nice. So essentially what it's doing at the minute is just triggering audio. I'm not triggering any external synths. So what I'm able to do now is, this is just one track, and if you're playing a live set, you'll have multiple tracks in the one thing. Within this tutorial, I'm only going to show you how to do one, and then in the next tutorial that I put together, I'll show you how to get multiple tracks into a live set. So this won't actually be your live set, or this won't be my live set, at least anyway. What I'm doing is I'm getting this track set up for a live set. Then what I'll do is I'll open up a blank Ableton project, and then I'll start bringing in all of the tracks that I've put together for a live set, if that makes sense, and then build a live set on that project. So essentially what we're doing here now is if I show you here, I'm using Ableton Push. So if I do this, you should see, actually, can I get a different view rather than my head? If we get Ableton back in there, and then we'll get Ableton in, and then we'll get the GoPro. I think that's the best view. Like so. There we go. Beautiful. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into session mode. And if you now look at the colors these colors represent basically what you have in Ableton. Okay, so if you look over the Ableton project, that's what we're looking at, right? Colors should match up. So then I can go down here and see all the different projects, and you can see the red line moving with an Ableton project, and this is basically what I have within my window. You know, so if you look at the window here in Ableton and you see that red line around everything, that's what I can access here. And then if I press down, I'm flipping down and I'm kind of going through all the different clips that I can trigger. So I'm going to go to the very top one, right? And this is essentially one sound. So then what I do is I move from one sound to the next sound to the next sound. If I was just to trigger here, it would just be one clip. All right, so if I trigger here, that would just be one clip. If I was to trigger here, that would also just be one clip, and that clip will cancel the top one. Okay, now that's not what I want to do. Basically what I want to do is go over here to the right hand side, and this will trigger the whole scene. So no matter what I have going across here, it'll trigger everything at once. So just to recap, when you essentially right click here on an area that you have looped, and you right click and you consolidate to a new scene, basically anything within this highlighted area will then form a new scene. So this would be a scene, for example. This would also be a scene, for example. Any of these are scenes, right? And it's triggering lots of different things. If I was to open up these group tracks, you would see all the things that it's actually triggering. There's quite a lot in here, right? But I don't want to see all that. I don't need to see all of that. As long as everything works the way it should do, we're good. And so it just makes more sense to group everything up like so. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I know how this track works, so I know basically when to trigger each thing, or have a good idea at least anyway, right? In some of the tracks, I do have markers at the bottom where it basically tells me when the track is about to, or the clip is about to finish the cycle and repeat again. You usually want to press play just before that happens, so then the next one comes in on time, right? So we're moving from one scene to the next scene to the next scene to the next scene, and we want to do that on time. Now the global quantization is really important here as well. So we've quantization set to 1 bar. So I essentially want to just bring this in before the news cycle, just before the news cycle, but not too soon before. So let's go ahead and jam out here a second and see exactly what's happening. So let's play the first sound. So now I know this lasts for 8 bars. So when I'm ready, I can trigger the next sound. So hopefully that makes sense, right? I'm going to actually just do a quick wee run over it, but before I do it, I'm just going to bring this looper back here to the start. It helps me remember exactly where I am. So let's start from the first one again. Now, what you can do as well is you can fade these things in. Everything doesn't have to come in straight away, but the way I have it set up, I don't need to do that at the minute, but you can if you have a push or another controller. You don't need push, by the way. So I'm looking at the global time up here, so I know when I need to bring something else in. and so on and so forth. So hopefully you kind of get the idea there. Really interesting way of working, I guess. There's just so much you can do with it. So I just want to show you how you can get from your track being within the arrangement view into clip view. And there's a quick and easy enough way to do that. I've just kind of touched on most of it already. But let's now open up I've created a separate project. So this is based on the tutorial. All right, so I'm not going to save anything there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up another project, and essentially this project is the exact same in every way, shape, or form, but it hasn't. I haven't brought in the sections here, right? So I haven't brought these sections from clip view to arrangement view, and I'm going to do that now. Or sorry, arrangement view to clip view, the other way around. So we've basically went through your track here now at this stage, and we're happy with all of the different markers that we've put in here, or locators I should call them, and now we want to transfer them over. So I'm going to show you how to do this in real time. So I'm going to right click here and consolidate to new scene. That's the selection that you need. Once I do that, it's going to render out copies of whatever clips exist within this highlighted area. And if we now flip over, we can see something here, right? So this is essentially what it's brought in, right? The clip that exists within that first intro section. So what I can do is I can now, if it's within a group, sometimes you can't move it. Well, at least in the context of what we're talking about when the group is closed. But what you can do is you can open it up like so and just move it wherever you want. So I'm just going to move it to the very top like so. These are the only things that are at the top. So now we know that this first section is intro 1, right? And what I would suggest that you do is, if you spend some time on your labeling, which I would suggest that you do, keep it the same. It'll be a lot less confusing. So if I just trigger this now, we should start to hear that sound coming in. And that should loop over 8 bars. There's the loop. Okay, so it doesn't sound great looping, but at the end of this loop, we're going to move on to your next one anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. This is just the start of the track. So that's the first one. Then we go on to the second one. I'm not going to do them all. Once you do a couple, you get the idea. It's the same thing over and over again. What I would recommend though is kind of highlight the section that you want it to fall into, because if you have to start moving them around, it can get a wee bit tricky. I'm just going to go on over to Ableton here so you can see that better. Yeah, so it just gets a wee bit tricky if you need to move stuff around, and it gets a bit confusing. So just basically tell Ableton where you want it to go by highlighting that area, and it should go in there, all being well. So if I right click now and consolidate time to new scene, it does exactly that. So it's moved this one down. So we're having the same issue here again. Now there's more things in this, so you just need to make sure you're selecting everything and then clicking and dragging that up like so. All right, so that would be intro 2. Like so. Okay, so let's do another few. Let's do our next one now, which is the base 1 intro. Just make sure everything's lined up correctly and it's the right length that you need it to be, and consolidate time to new scene. So yeah, it's it's all jumping down quite a bit. All right, so there's quite a lot in this one. Now if I do this, what I can do, I'll show you a wee tip here. I'm going to open up a new MIDI track, right, and I'm going to just create a blank clip here. I'm going to duplicate this the whole way down like so. Right, so now if I want to select that, I can, and then I can move this up here and everything else follows. There's a wee tip for you. It's a quicker way to do it. This is just nothing. There's nothing in here. It's just a MIDI clip, but it allows you to move stuff around much easier, and you know that everything is included, right? So there's a wee tip for you. So base 1 intro is next. Done. Okay, so we're actually doing quite well time-wise for this as well. It does take a wee bit of time, but that's okay. So consolidate, check the loop length. And so that's, another wee trick, I guess, as well, is just to pretend that you're renaming that and then press Command and C, or Control and C. And then when you're going back into your arrangement view, let's bring that up there. So hold down Shift, click and drag up. Didn't work. Let's try that again. Oh yeah, you need to click on this and drag this up. There we go. So then let's Command and R to rename, pop that in there, and there we go, right? So let's just check to make sure everything is in sync. So I can just, I'm not going to use push for this. I'm just going to trigger it here, and then we'll run through these. See how it sounds. Should sound the exact same as what we just listened to. I'll just show you this in session mode within push as well, so you can see it is the same. Well, there's not as much going on because we haven't brought everything in yet, but yeah, you'll get the idea. So you can see both here now. It's a better view, right? So now, because I was talking, I missed my cue. That's fine. So again, what I'll do is I'll just move this loop brace back here. This just keeps me in time. I don't know, it's not absolutely essential. I just need more practice, clearly. So if I'm going to go back here now and show you Ableton better view so you can see it. So just before this is due to change, I'm going to click the second scene, so that comes in time. So just before, around about 7 bars. As long as it's over 7 and before 8. Right, so I clicked that too early. Doesn't matter. It still sounded okay. You would get away with that. Right, so everything is syncing up there. Well, pardon me bringing the other one in too early. It's fine. You would get away with it, but it's best not to do it. So that timing was slightly out as well, but that was my fault on not able to. So you get the idea. They are linking up fine if I, press play on time, I guess. So yeah, you can even set follow actions and have that happening automatically, to be totally honest. But yeah, you need to be doing something when you're playing live, I guess. So say if you're putting this together and you want to do some part of this live, well, that's fine. You can potentially have a drum machine that you're operating live. It could be a synthesizer that you're operating live. It could be both. It could be a guitar. It could be anything at all. It just depends on what way you want to work. So basically, if there's a part of this that you want to play, mute it, play it in. And you can just open up a channel and play in directly. My advice would be to monitor before it goes into Ableton, though, just to stop any lag or anything like that. But yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to basically just revert back to what I showed you there before. So once you put all of these in and you have everything set up and everything labeled the way you should, you then end up with what we had before. Right, so I'm not going to save that. You end up with a project that has everything in where it should do in clip view. Some people actually just play live in arrangement view as well. That's absolutely fine. This is just an alternative way of working. So what I can do is I can just go in here now and press Command and A and then delete. Right, we don't need any of that in there. We can delete all of the markers too, but yeah, I'm not going to bother. Okay, so now everything that we have is in this one section. So at this stage, what I would do is I would save that, and then I can start up a new project with Ableton and then start bringing this in. Right, so to do that, it is quite simple and straightforward. Now, you will need to keep an eye on your CPU usage, and if your CPU usage is screaming at you, even with one track, that's something that you need to address. So at the minute, I have quite a lot of VSTs in here, doing quite a lot of things. So in Ableton 11, it tells you which things are using the most processing power, which is nice. So within here, Yeah, I've got three non-native VSTs, right? So they're not made by Ableton. So if I right click here and then freeze that track, it renders all of that down to audio. Therefore, it doesn't have to use processing power to process all of these VSTs because it just makes an audio copy of them. If I was to right click then and flatten that, it would basically, ingrain these things into the audio. Now, I don't want to go that far just yet, but you can do that, but there's no going back. If you freeze, you can unfreeze. So that's something to be aware of. So you do need to definitely keep your CPU in check, because the last thing that you want is for your computer to basically freak out halfway through a set. It is no fun at all, especially if you spent months on putting everything together and then at the last hurdle that happens. It's horrible. Sometimes your computer can start glitching and slowing down, so it's just something to be aware of. I'm using a super powerful computer here at the minute, and my CPU usage is at like 30% for one track, but it's based on the VSTs that I'm using. So I just need to address that. So, there's a few others in here as well, and that's basically what's going on. So I would need to do that. Imagine having 10 tracks or 20 tracks in your live set. It's going to get really buggy if you don't address this sooner rather than later. So I would even address it before I start pulling things into another live set. Anywho, so if I want to open a new live set now, right? So I'm not going to save that. And yeah, so say this is going to be the live set, right? So file, collect all and save, and just set up a live set here, right? So okay, no idea how I even got that simple. Okay, so live set tutorial 1, live set 11, no, A11 tutorial 1. Okay, so just pop this to the desktop, save, and then it's just habit collect all and save as well. Right, okay, so we have a template here now. So maybe what I'd want to do is, just have one MIDI track in there and group it, right? So then what I can do is I can go to my places, and this is just basically you setting up shortcuts to go to anywhere on your computer or your external drives, right? So what I'm going to do is I don't have my desktop currently set up here, so I'm going to add a folder and basically add desktop and then open. So now the desktop shows up here. So then what I need to do is look for the track, which is this one here. And then what I can do is I can drag this in and pop it in there. And after hopefully a short period of time, it all appears in here. And there we go. So we now have all of those sections in here, right? So now the only thing is we don't seem to have the the names that we've put in here, so we might need to redo that. There might be a way of bringing them in. I'm not entirely sure, to be totally honest. I'll look into that, but you might need to redo those essentially. But you've everything else in there, and essentially what you could do now is say this is your track one, and then you might just want to color everything the exact same. So say track 1 is this color, right? And then you just color everything else that as well. Let me just hold on shift and try that again. Right, okay, so might need to go into each one of those and color them individually, but I didn't think you needed to do that. So let's do, not sure. Anyway, so if you've everything the same color, that's good. So say this is now track 1, rename, try it again, track 1. Okay, excellent. So we don't need these are not part of it, either is that MIDI, right? So that's still nice and tidy. So there's your first track all in there now essentially, right? So you could still literally go ahead and start triggering your sounds from here. Oh, sorry, I need to change my master output. Okay, so there's something to be aware of. On my master, my previous setup, I did have some mastering effects, so this won't be as loud, but you get the idea, right? So then you move on to the second clip and third and so on, and just make sure that you've got your, your standard quantize setting set up here. So this is your first track, right? So then once you have that set up, you can have a second track and a third track and a fourth track and so on and so forth. So that's essentially the starting point, and that's as far as I want to go now for this. So this is the start of your live set, essentially. And if I wanted to access this within, a controller, again, that's absolutely fine. Very easy to do. So if I show you here now, everything's just showing up the exact same way again, right? So that's all in there, and that's quite easy to do. So hopefully that wasn't too stressful. It didn't seem like, if it's not, that it's completely unachievable. A lot of people, there's two main questions that I'm asked. One is, right, I've finished a piece of music. What do I do next? So the whole idea of releasing a piece of music is really scary for a lot of people. I'm going to do a separate video on that. It'll be multiple videos, to be totally honest, because there's a lot of ground to cover, but don't let that put you off. It's definitely worth doing. And then the second question is this: how now do I, I've got this music and I want to play it out, but how do I play this live? So definition of live changes depending on, on your background. I think, you want to make this as live as possible, both for you as an artist. You want to enjoy playing live rather than just sitting pressing buttons and being completely bored. That's not good for you as an artist. That's not good for the viewer or the listener. So you need to find ways to, make it enjoyable for you and make it enjoyable for whoever's come to see you. So you might want to incorporate more live elements into it, in the sense that there might be a melody in there. You might want to get another MIDI keyboard or use push or something like that to play that melody in. And you might maybe want a drum machine or some samples that you can trigger and mess around with. Maybe some one shots, maybe some other loops and fills and bells and whistles, essentially, to kind of beef up the track. So you need to mess with that for a while and see what way you want to go. So yeah, that's it for now. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.